Leslie Golden started it because he had a music shop in the High Street, and his brother had a stationer's shop which was joined together at the back. But for some reason he had an interest in cine, and so upstairs above his pianos and music and all sorts of things, he had a little tiny theatre where he showed films to sell the idea. And also along one wall he had a complete library of Pathé 300-foot films. Well, now that's where he started the Cine Club, and we had discussions, but they were mainly interested in making films rather than showing. Well, the one I was involved with was a thing called the Table Turned, and it was a mock thing. It was about a seance sat round a table, and somebody came in who didn't quite understand it, and he spotted the boy under the table and he dragged him out. And they say, "Oh, come and join us." So he sat down, and at that point we all nodded off, you see, but he didn't. And he got out a cigarette and he was about to light it, and the actual table turned. And he woke everybody up and said, "Come on, it's actually turning." And then we told him to shut up, and that was all the film was. But I was in that. One of the keen people was Sidney Bly, who had a radio shop in Canterbury. He made an awful lot of good 16mm stuff, but the people who couldn't afford 16mm used 9.5, because that's all there was. There was no 8 until later in the 30s. But we were only in those circumstances about a year, because there was the Institute in Northgate, where there was a big room available. And it so happened that one of the trustees of this was Charles Lefevre, who was the mayor and Lefevre's department store man. They immediately made him president of the Cine Club, and then with that influence we had this whole room where we moved in on a permanent basis, so where we could build sets. And that's when it really took off, and we built some lovely sets. In those days, Cine Club didn't have projection evenings or anything. You didn't see people's holiday, well, very occasionally. But they made films of all sorts, and they made one at Tankerton about an escaped convict and this, that. It was a load of rubbish, but we did make this film in which I featured. And it's a wonderful story that I'm there as a bit of a rebel because I wouldn't join in the beach games. I was interested in a magazine which was writing about the new infrared film. And so I got the infrared film and I took a group. And in the corner of the group there was a woman in a deck chair, which was the escaped convict dressed as a woman, you see. That was a giveaway. So I then go to the chemist shop in Tankerton Square and had this processed all in 2 minutes, which was ridiculous. And the group were looking at these photographs, you see, and they said, "Look at this woman, she's got a beard," which was infrared photography, you see. And of course he tried to escape, he was captured and brought to justice. This was a publicity photograph by the Canterbury Cine Club, taken in their studio in Northgate, and it was taken during the filming of the drama section of a film we made, The Way of the Amateur, and it was using indoor Kodachrome, which we had to get specially from Kodak. These were the main lights, made by Bill Entwistle, who took the photograph. Over here was a chap called Sparks, who was a headmaster. That was Cardew, who worked for the electricity board. That was the Canterbury board. That's me. That's Dr. Brett, who was the chairman. And that was Pentin, who became mayor of Canterbury, and his son became mayor. And over here is another junior member, Jack Blundell. And the third junior member is way over here, which was Anita Golden, and that was Rita Blundell, who was Jack's sister. And that's Bob, the man who was the director of this episode, who worked for the city engineer. This gentleman who was the star, I couldn't remember his name, but the back there is of Bill Lillywhite, the farmer. The Way of the Amateur was very ambitious. It showed the various aspects of amateur filmmaking then. One was a news item, another one was a documentary. I remember it showed the river with the weeds growing because it was crystal clear. And various aspects. And at the very end they had a drama section of this very flamboyant actor came in and sat down. And it turned out he was the rear end of a horse, but it was quite good. Back in 1936, a family called Blundell had a son called Jack, who was my age. Now, Jack Blundell he was a chorister at Canterbury. So I joined a party that Canon Crum took up on the roof of the cathedral, and he shuttled up and we sat astride the ridge of the cathedral. And then where the transepts meet the main thing, the lead goes like that, so we use that as stepping stones. And I've got some movie of that actually. So that was interesting. But Jack also had a cine interest, and he, like myself, built a little cinema. But in those days, no electricity in Bridge, and you had to rely on batteries and things. And on one occasion, we decided to plug into his father's car for 6 volts, which was marvellous for our projector, but the next morning he couldn't start his car to go to work, so that was trouble. But they then decided to make a film about a couple eloping to Gretna Green, because in those days Gretna Green was the place to go to get married as on the off licence or whatever they called it. And it was a bit corny, but fortunately I have managed to get it on tape and I've copied it. It's a bit scrappy, but I've got it all together, and it's now it's an archive thing called Love Finds a Way. Now, one of the members was a chap called Bill Entwistle, who was a very keen cineman, and he used to make films here in Upstreet. And he used to make them in 9.5 with a hand-turned camera. And he was very adventurous, and he used to make westerns with all the regalia. But he had a bar sequence once that he never had enough people. So with this hand-turned 9.5 Pathé camera, he took it with half the film blanked off, and they were all acting. And then he rewound the film and blanked the other one. They all went the other side, you see. So when it finished up, you had all these people in this bar. He was a very adventurous chap. Well, he went into searchlights, I think, during the war. After the war, he set up as a professional still photographer, and he had studios in Canterbury. But for all the production of that, he had this little studio upstairs over a stable in Grove Court, where the family lived. His uncle, would it be an uncle? Yes, it was uncle, who was the technical man with Marconi, who made the first broadcast from Newfoundland to England. and that was the connection. So they're very technical people. But Bill, he had a great generator, and he generated some of the electricity for Upstreet, but mainly for his studio. But the lights for these things were marvellous, great big things about 4-foot diameter. And for the reflecting surface, we had to collect all the silver paper out of boxes of cigarettes. And that was all stuck on the back. And it had a huge lamp about that big. Well, when we moved into Northgate Studios, we needed extra power. But fortunately, one of the members was also the senior technician on the Canterbury Electricity Works, is where Sainsbury is today. So they piped a special lead out to us, so we had all the lighting, and it was quite fascinating. But there it was. I think that lasted till 1939. I remember the very last meeting we ever had, I think it was just 3 of us, had a day trip to Calais, and that was the end. But it never, well, it did revive after the war, but it went dead during the war years.